putting this on YouTube. So later on in time, if you want to share with your friends who are not being able to attend or some other church member, they can go back to our website and you will be able to share this. So this is a good thing for all of us. So without further ado, I would like to call David to come and lead us today. Give them a hand.
Hello, hello, hello. Okay. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, this is the second time I'll be doing a diabetes self-management education. How often should you attend this? So the ADA recommends at least once a year. At least once a year, you have to refresh on the concepts if you are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Anytime you're over your goal A1C range, you should know your goal. Or any particular time in your life situation that things happen. You know, you have death in the family, you're going through some stress, you need to reevaluate because diabetes management is not a cookie cutter. So what may be working right now will not be working later on, and you'll need to re-strategize what you're doing to keep your blood sugars under good control. Not just blood sugars, but to keep the quality of your life at its top or best, okay? So since we all ate, my first is always to get everybody moving, okay? So we don't, us educators don't use the word exercise. Same is the word diet. We try to avoid the word diet. They're very negative, okay? So you will hear from me mindful eating, healthy eating, but never diet, because diet is politically incorrect, okay? Just like exercise. Because when you ask people, do you exercise? No, my knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurt, everything hurts, right? Unfortunately, when we get older, our spare parts are not replaceable. So most of the time we have to live with that. So I ask them, can you move? And most of the time, if you're not yet dead, most of the time you can still move. So usually I would tell them, like right now, let's do some movement. Can you move your hands? Can you flick? Can you do that? Okay. Now, can you still stand? Okay, go ahead and stand. Okay. Continue snapping your fingers. Okay? You're still moving, right? Now, can you do this with your hands? Up and down motion. This is movement. Any kind of muscular movement burns sugar. Okay? All right. Let's do 8 counts. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, good. So you think you can move your arms a different direction this time? Can you do like punching movements like this? Going up, left, and right, and left, and right. Okay, so let's do 8 counts more. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, good. So that's moving your biceps. Now let's do a little bit of stretching movements. So I see a lot of people who did some fruit picking. So can you raise your hand like picking up a high fruit and putting it down? Other side. Alternate. Apples, persimmon, mango, a mango tree. Okay, so let's do 8 counts again. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's do lateral movements this time, okay? Still focusing on the arms because it's hard to move about with your legs. But all right, so lateral movements, let's do the letter L. Okay, the letter L with your arms like this. 1. Put it down. 2. 1, 2. Okay, so let's do 8 counts. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, you're getting it. Very good. All right, so a couple more. Front punches. Be careful you don't punch anybody in front of you. All right, okay. So position your arms like this, then 1, 2. Okay? Can you do this? Okay, so let's do 8 counts. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, all right. And modified, what do you call this? Jumping jack. So if you can't really jump, I teach them to do this. Okay? All right, can you do that? Let's do 8 counts of it. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's do a little bit combination this time of these steps. Okay, so 2 punches and 2 like this. Okay, let's do it. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Okay, so those are all doable, right? And whatever movement that you can do with your feet, you can march, so you can choose to do this. If you can do it, it's called movement, but it does benefit your blood sugar. How much do you need of it? You need probably 10 minutes after each meal. And if you eat 3 meals a day and do 10 minutes each time, that gives you 30 minutes, which is the American Heart Association recommendation for physical movement, right? So it's very easy. Now, it's funner when we put music to it. So I have some volunteers. I have some volunteers who would show you the best beat to the same steps that you just did, okay? Yeah. We're ready for the music. efficacent oil. So that was 3 minutes. That was 3 minutes. You repeat that twice, you almost have your 10-minute movement. So does it, be creative in how you would be moving. It could be a walk. It doesn't have to be outside. You don't have to be in a gym membership. You don't have to attend, Zumba, or you don't have to buy a Peloton. As long as you can move, you can do your improved sugar control by just moving. So I have a question. What do you think is the best exercise? So I'll have some people answer. I'll probably choose 3.
Okay.
Walking.
Okay, walking,
Stretching.
stretching, yoga, probably 2. All right, let's do 2 more. What's the best exercise?
Okay, shout it out.
Household chores, Brother Bert. Bicycling. Okay. Sige, one more. Sister Anna. Dancing. We just did that. Very good.
All right.
All right. Okay. No. Gardening. Who said swimming a while ago? Did I give you already, brother? Okay. Pilates. Depends what you eat. All right. Okay. So the correct answer is, what is the best exercise? Is the exercise you can do. Whatever you can do is the best exercise. Okay. So you don't. Will running be good for me? If you can run, then run. If you can bike, you bike. If you can swim, you swim. Do not force things. If you cannot bike, don't bike, okay? You might end up with a hip fracture. Recommendation again, 10 minutes after each meal. That's easily incorporated. Okay, so you have a copy of the objectives in terms of today's talk in your handouts. It's not working. You have to be nearer. Is this out of battery? Okay, so let's just go to the next. Okay, so what's my role? So the main role I have is, while conducting this, I am an educator. But 2 hats I wear, I'm also a nurse practitioner. That means I have prescriptive authority to actually start my patients on whatever I think they would be benefiting from. So actually, when I was trying to look for a job, it was a deciding factor because all of my employment are in San Diego. So I challenged the Lord. I said, if you give me a job close by, it means we're not going to move. And I've been looking for a job locally for almost a year and found nothing. So I text Sister Pam, my last resort. I said, let's see if she has a network. And I have to be in endocrinology. I don't want to be in family practice. I want to be managing diabetes. Those are my 3 checklists for my prayer. And within the same day, she texts one of the private endocrinology MDs here in Temecula, and our office is actually in your handout folder. That's our clinic address. And within the same day, the doctor called me. When can you start? So we were in the process of already listing our house that time, so it means we're supposed to be here still. So my role is I advocate for diabetic patients because from my family alone, I think if you're Filipino, you're predisposed to be diabetes. It's just a matter of time. Okay, it's not really a question of will you have it, it's a matter of when, just because of our culture. Until you do a turnaround, that's the end. That's the end that we're heading for. And probably a lot of us here have experienced that you could be diabetic or pre-diabetic. That's why you're attending here. So I want my advocacy is more of, especially for Filipinos, like a cultural redemption so that you can still be proud of your Filipino heritage without diabetes being associated with it. So in the hospital, I strategize management because there's no one method that will work for everybody. And a lot of times that's how you get treated. You go to your primary care provider, what do? They treat your numbers. They look at your A1C, they start you on this, it doesn't work, they add another pill. You know that diabetes education is a 10-hour paid benefit for any Medicare member. It should be free. And it should be something that's the first thing that the doctor should be prescribing. But unfortunately, education is not a pill, right? It's easier to go to the pharmacy, go to CVS, get your metformin, rather than have a sit down, talk, and discuss lifestyle and how these medications actually work in improving your condition. So my goal is after this, you also become an advocate for other diabetic patients to be competent, because a lot of times when I talk to my patients, the first thing they say is, when I ask them, do you have any questions? And they would say, where were you all this time? I've been diabetic for 30 years, nobody talked to me this way. Because they never met a diabetes educator, because it's always at the back list of a lot of the medical practitioners. So let's talk about the current situation. That way you know that if you enter this field, you have job security. That's what we talk in the clinic. It's like, until we die, we have patients. Because diabetes is nowhere in sight from ending. It's actually getting worse. Even before COVID hit the US, it has been the first global chronic pandemic. So these are just rough numbers in the next 25 years. So we expect that here in the United States, we will have 48, where's the United States? I cannot see it. Here, North America, 48 million. Currently, we have 34 million diabetics. That means there are 34.2 million, actually, diabetics currently. I think this is 2019 statistics, so there are actually more right now. Okay, so that's how bad it is. So I go to this particular question to see your idea. What do you think is the allowable added sugar per day? When you say added sugar, if you look at the nutritional facts, it will be under there. It says sugars, under total carbohydrates. What do you think is the allowable added sugar per day? Dito na po. I'm not guilt-tripping you. How many grams? We're actually talking about grams. 2 grams. 10? Any other answer? So the only organization that has a recommendation for sugar intake is the American Heart Association, and this is for non-diabetics. Okay? For men, it's 36 grams, and for women, 25 grams of added sugar. Okay? And this is for non-diabetics. If you're not diabetic, this is your limit. Okay? So if you're diabetic, this should be less added sugar. Okay? 20 grams or less is my personal recommendation. And in some cases, for certain diabetics who are considered fragile, then it might be even lower. Or sometimes there are people who can't tolerate any kind of sugar at all. So these are some fun facts. And this is just for your information. So this is milk tea, okay, boba. Brown sugar boba milk tea is 92.5 grams. Remember your limit, 25 if you're not diabetic, okay? Green tea, 43 grams of sugar. You think, oh, matcha, I'm zen mode today. I'll take green tea, milk tea. It's 43 grams, 80 grams, 42, 102 grams for the bubble milk tea. 102. And sometimes people have 2 of these in a day. That's not including their meals. That doesn't include the bread, the kanin, kalamay, and you're already overboard, okay? So Starbucks, for their venti frappuccino, has 102 grams of sugar. Coffee bean and tea leaf, 32-ounce lemonade. You would think lemon, it's sour, right? It's low in sugar. No, it's 70 grams of sugar. Sprite, 140 calories. This is a 12 fluid ounce bottle, and it has how many sugars? 38. 38 grams. And this is another picture I found and shows you how much teaspoons of sugars in each kind of the common drinks. So now think of the usual drink that you consider less evil, and Google how much sugar it actually has, you know? And most of the time, this is common knowledge or misconception a lot of patients have. Like, oh, I already quit soda. I just drink orange juice now. I only stick to fruit juices, okay? Or I have a patient, I don't eat chips, I just eat grapes. Each piece of grape is 2 grams of sugar. So instead of a bag of chips and a bag of grapes, they're actually equally evil if you're diabetic, right?
How about green tea and black coffee?
Green tea without any sugar, just steep green tea, no sugar, that's acceptable. That's 0 usually. Black coffee too, yes. All right. So excessive sugar intake, why is it a problem? Because it's very prevalent because it's socially acceptable, right? We have Halloween. We spike everybody's sugar on that one night, and we're okay with it. It's not considered a crime because it's not only socially acceptable, it's even promoted, right? So that's why we're bringing up this awareness, so you can have more sound decisions. So I want you to listen to this quick video. It's one of the most relevant videos I found online that in I think a 2-minute video explains what diabetes is really about. Can we play the video?
There are 2 main types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. They're different conditions, but they're both serious. There are some other rarer types of diabetes too. What all types of diabetes have in common is that they cause people to have too much glucose in their blood. But we all need some glucose. It's what gives us our energy. We get glucose when our bodies break down the carbohydrates that we eat or drink, and that glucose is released into our blood. We also need a hormone called insulin. It's made by our pancreas, and it's insulin that allows the glucose in our blood to enter our cells and fuel our bodies. If you don't have diabetes, your pancreas senses when glucose has entered your bloodstream and releases the right amount of insulin so the glucose can get into your cells. But if you have diabetes, this system doesn't work. When you've got type 1 diabetes, you can't make any insulin at all. If you've got type 2 diabetes, it's a bit different. The insulin you make either can't work effectively or you can't produce enough of it. In both types of diabetes, because glucose can't get into your cells, it begins to build up in your blood. And too much glucose in your blood causes a lot of different problems. To begin with, it leads to diabetes symptoms like having to wee a lot, being incredibly thirsty and feeling very tired. You may also lose weight, get infections like thrush, or suffer from slow-healing wounds. Over a long period of time, high glucose levels in your blood can seriously damage your heart, your eyes, your feet, and your kidneys. These are known as the complications of diabetes. But with the right treatment and care, people can live a healthy life. And there's much less risk that someone will experience these complications. If you've got diabetes, you can find lots of information and support about living with it using our website and helpline. As well as campaigning for everyone with diabetes to get the right care, Diabetes UK fund research into all types of diabetes so we can develop new treatments and one day find a cure. You can find out more about type 1 and type 2 diabetes and how they're treated in our next videos.
Okay, so diabetes is lifelong. Once your A1C reads 6.5 2 times, you'll be labeled as a diabetic, and it will never leave your record. So if you're diabetic and then you're below the diabetes range, you're considered a controlled diabetic. So if you're not yet diabetic, best that we keep it that way, but if you are, we have to maintain a certain goal. So there is no cure, but it is manageable. That's one of the things that we emphasize. So it mentioned a lock and key mechanism, right? And this is the most common explanation how they would go about diabetes. Have you ever met, though, a door that has been rusted through? You have the correct key and it just won't turn. So what are the things that you might do to make it turn? Grease it. Grease it. What else? When you don't have oil, you probably just like jiggle it, right? So exercise is that jiggling of the insulin in terms of if you parallel it with it. It makes the insulin work better. It makes your body more sensitive to the insulin you are producing. So that's one way. Greasing it, that's the role of the medications. There are certain medications that make you more sensitive to the insulin, therefore it actually removes that. Weight loss also addresses insulin resistance. You need about 5% of weight loss in order to decrease your insulin resistance, because each percentage of body fat is a layer that prevents the insulin from actually working on your cell. So the other thing I would tell you is that when you're diabetic, you have a broken thermostat for your blood sugar. It doesn't work. Have you ever had your thermostat broken? You know, it's winter and the AC turns on like very low, very cold air, or summertime, your heater turns on. So that's the explanation for a lot of diabetics, like, I didn't even eat anything and my blood sugar is going up. Or I only ate a piece of, in isang kagat, one bite, tinikman ko lang yung suman. I just ate a small piece of that sticky rice and my sugar is now 200 plus. Because when you're diabetic, the mechanisms that actually control your blood sugar are broken. So if you push your blood sugar to the wrong direction, it can continue in that direction on its own, even with medications, depending on how high your blood sugar can go. So the insulin and lock and key is the most common, but actually diabetes is more than that. All of your organs that usually maintain your blood sugar at good control are malfunctioning, okay? So the most common, of course, your pancreas. Your pancreas is the one producing insulin. That's, a lot of diabetics think that's the only problem. So they think that if I'm giving myself insulin, my sugar should be fine, but it's not the case. So these are 6 areas that I want you to focus on that are contributing why your blood sugar goes up when you're diabetic. First is appetite, the brain. Increased appetite is a problem because there is an inherent loss of that hormone, and I'll go over that in a little bit, that controls your own appetite. So when you're diabetic and it's uncontrolled, you expect that you're a voracious eater. You just ate and you're still hungry. Or you have a fixation on food, and that's not because you're a glutton or what. There's the imbalance of those hormones within your system that cause you to be always hungry. Why is that? Because the sugar is only in the blood, and within the blood, sugar has no function. The only time that sugar is burned as energy is if it's inside the cell. So what does that equate to? Your body internally is still starving. It's starving because the sugar is just in the blood and it's not being burned. So you're always hungry. Next, you have the liver that releases extra sugar. So if you feel your right upper abdomen here, right below your rib cage is your liver. Your liver is a storage of sugar called glycogen. And it keeps storing that for a rainy day. Let's say all of a sudden there's food shortage, you were dropped off, stranded in an island. That's where your body will start drawing its nutrients from, extra sugar coming from the liver. When you're diabetic, even if you're not starving, your body thinks you are. So even in the presence of food, it releases that extra sugar. So that's second mechanism that we're not aware about. Third, body fat. So body fat is thought to be a dead, useless mass within the body. Actually, it's not. It's considered metabolically active. It releases hormones that actually fights insulin. It releases hormones that imbalances your natural estrogen, testosterone levels. So when you're dealing with diabetes, it's not just one thing that we're worried about insulin. No, it's all of these factors. Gut absorption is accelerated, meaning if you eat a small piece of simple carbohydrate, it's in your blood within minutes. Wherein if you're not diabetic, there's usually stop points or checkpoints that the sugar has to pass by before it actually reaches the blood. But when you're diabetic, you eat one piece, it's there. Your sugar is already high. And then lastly, the kidneys. The kidneys are supposed to be removing extra sugar. When they feel, your blood is so sweet, let's remove some. That's the role of the kidneys. But the receptors within the kidneys, when you're diabetic, they're not working properly. So your blood sugar is high, it's still keeping the rest of the blood sugar. It's conserving them because they think that you don't have enough sugar on board. So all of these things, put them together, and not changing your lifestyle, you can inevitably see why you end up in the hospital if we don't control it sooner. Okay, so why are we so adamant about sugar levels and A1C? A1C is the average of your blood sugar for the past 90 days. And if your A1C is above 7%, this is the comparison. It's like having, put, let's say, 6 cubes of sugar in your mouth and keep it there for a day. Don't spit it out, don't swallow it. What happens inside your mouth? So imagine all that damage that you're thinking of right now, the damage to your gums, to your cheeks, all the soft tissues that harden. You might have sores after one day. It happens internally. All of the arteries, all of the veins where your blood sugar passes, it scrapes through. It gives it a good scrubbing, where you don't need that. That's why patients with diabetes usually are high risk of forming clots. Actually, they say that when you're diabetic, you are in a chronic state of inflammation because your blood is flowing so slowly. So imagine something really sweet like syrup or honey. When you pour it out of the bottle, it's oozing out. Same thing happens inside your body when you're diabetic. Your blood is no longer flowing. It's oozing. So whenever you think of that and you know what your blood sugar is ranging, it gives you an idea what kind of damages your body's actually sustaining. That's why I have a lot of patients, I have tingling, they never go away on my feet. That's because your feet are deprived of circulation already. That's called neuropathy. So this simple analogy, a lot of times numbers are just numbers for a lot of patients, but when you tell them your blood becomes like honey, okay? Or think of sugar in your mouth. They can't think of sugar inside their blood, but you can definitely imagine what your body will suffer if you imagine the same damage is actually happening inside. So that explains why we have all these symptoms. So I always tell them, have you ever made pickles or preserved fruits with sugar? Put fresh fruits, add the sugar, all of the water goes out from that fruit or vegetable, right? It dehydrates you. That's why you're always thirsty, you're always peeing, you lose weight. So a lot of times I have these patients, I haven't changed my lifestyle, I still eat the same amount of food, and I'm losing weight. It's a miracle. No, it's diabetes or cancer. Okay, those are the only two things that can make you lose weight unintentionally. I would say tuberculosis, but we're in a first world country. So usually tuberculosis is not that common. So unintentional weight loss is usually the hallmark sign that you're towards the end stage of your diabetes. Okay, so ABCs of diabetes. This should be in your handout. You should know this by heart. So how I tell my patients who have diabetes, your ABCs are your bank account, okay? So whenever you are asked by a medical provider and you are asked what is your current A1C, you should know it, or at least know where to look and see it, okay? Same thing with, that's A1C. B is for blood pressure. C is for cholesterol. Okay, those are your ABCs. Specifically, cholesterol, there are 4 types. I just want you to focus on your LDL level because that's the one that clogs your heart the most. Okay, LDL, cholesterol, blood pressure, A1C. So if you don't know those, and usually if my patient doesn't know, they usually are not compliant. It's because they don't want to see the numbers. So I put it this way. If you went to your bank and you did a balance inquiry with your teller, and the teller told you, your balance is fine, how would you take that? Or they would tell you, it went down a little bit. It went up a little bit. So the number should be exact. You should know them when they were last taken. That's the only way that you can actually manage the numbers. Okay? So these are the goals, generally speaking. 7% for the A1C, blood pressure 140 over less than 140 over 90, and your LDL should be less than 100. So next time, if you have a chance to review your lab work or your health record, check these 3 things. Are you meeting them? Okay? And S, if you're smoking, S would be the S for the ABCs, or stop smoking. So these numbers are actually customized, individualized. You have to talk to your provider as to what goal would be okay, because not everybody has the same goal. This is another source of frustration. So I have an 80-year-old patient, and the primary care actually wants them to be at 6.5 or lower. Anybody who's above 75 years old, our goal is to keep the A1C at 8% or lower. Or if you're greater than 65, less than 75, with a lot of comorbidities, you have kidney problem, you have high blood pressure, you're dealing with so many things, our goal goes up to 8%. We just we're more concerned to make sure that you're not actually having low blood sugars at that point. So if you're not at that age or condition, usually a 7% is a good thing to aim for. And about blood pressure should be taken routinely. If you're on blood pressure medications, it should be done every day, same time of the day, usually when you wake up or right before sleeping, because that will compare with the numbers they actually get in the clinic. Because I have a lot of patients, when they see their providers, they're actually already very nervous. So when we check the blood pressure, it's usually above their baseline. So I would ask, do you check it at home? What do you usually see? And I believe that more, unless they're unreliable. So I don't blame them, because you know how they do it in the clinic? The first thing they do when you check in, they check your weight. Then they sit you down after seeing what you don't want to see, and they check your blood pressure, right? So I usually do a repeat manual check whenever I see a patient who is hypertensive on a clinic visit. So ABCs, consider them your smoke alarm. So each time you are off target, imagine a smoke alarm ringing, okay? Now, if all three alarms are ringing, we need to do something about it, okay? Oh, no, sorry. This is a wrong instruction. There are actually 2 folders that were given out. If you would check the very last, see if you're the lucky one. We're looking for these 2 words. Okay. We have Brother Paul with the DPP. Okay. Anybody who got the GLP?
Let me write it down.
It might not have been distributed. It might not have been taken. Everybody checked already? There's no GLP? It might still be there. So, oh, there. Okay, Brother Paul and Brother Bert, I want you to stand here in front, near the slide, and then just hold the card with you, the page. Okay, all right. So I made this because I don't want to sound too technical. These are pharmaceutical terms. These are hormones, okay? GLP stands for glucagon-like peptide, okay? And a lot of people don't talk about this, glucagon-like peptide, but its function for people, normal function for people is, number 1, the moment you eat, it tells your brain that you actually had enough to eat. Suppresses appetite on its own. And you produce this naturally in your gut, okay? The other effect of this is, if you ate something high in carb, like starchy food, it tells your gut to actually slow down a little bit, so your sugar doesn't spike. And the third function of GLP is that it tells your pancreas to release more insulin so that your sugar actually goes down. Put those 3 things, you stop eating, it slows down the absorption of carbs, it releases a little bit more insulin, keeps your blood sugar at good control, right? If you're diabetic, have you heard of this before? Less, because it's one of the most expensive medications. We actually produce this as a weekly injection, Ozempic, Trulicity, daily injection, Victoza, or weekly injection. The oldest one is Bidurian. Okay? We can actually supplement this. But what do we usually see in practice? When you see a high blood sugar, they immediately go for the insulin, right? So there are different ways that we can actually adjust this. DPP is another hormone. It's actually a hormone we don't like. It stands for diethylpeptidases, which is released by fat cells, fat tissue. it released in the body, and what it does, it deactivates GLP. So usually if you are type 2 and you're heavier, you produce a lot of DPP and it stops your GLP. So it creates those symptoms. So what do we do with DPP? We inhibit it. Okay, we have DPP inhibitors such as Januvia. Okay, that's why these two medications are very expensive. So if you don't have good insurance coverage, it's like paying for a luxury car monthly, anywhere from $800 to $1,000. But if you have good insurance, you could actually have this for like $30 per refill, something like that. So Januvia, Trajenta, these are all under the DPP inhibitors. So why do we like these particular medications? Because they help you lose weight, they help you control the blood sugars without actually dropping your blood sugar too low. Okay? All right, thank you, brothers. And you get prices.
Wow. Let me take you the price.
All right. So this is the explanation of the GLP. Once the gut releases it, it tells your brain, it tells your gut, it talks to three people. It has threefold effect and it helps you lose weight. Some of these are actually out for weight management, not even diabetes, okay? So the more you lose weight, the better we actually control the blood sugars because we fix that imbalance between DPP and GLP. And a lot of times, doctors won't go that route. They'll just give you the medication. Here is the medication, take it weekly, without going over what you need to know about them. So here are the weekly injections, Ozempic, Trulicity. And I don't have any stocks or investments with pharmaceutical companies. Okay, that would be one of the disclaimers I have. I just study them, which one would be more effective, and we recommend. One of the best friends of our management is metformin, and this has gained a lot of negative publicity throughout the years. Okay, I have patients who are really, really against metformin. Okay, metformin is weight neutral, doesn't cause you to gain weight, and it does not harm your kidneys. It does not harm your kidneys. Let me repeat that. It does not harm your kidneys. But it does need your kidneys to be okay for it to exit because it's excreted by the kidneys. What is damaging to the kidneys is high blood sugar. Remember that analogy? Your blood is oozing. It passes through your kidneys, destroys your kidneys, and then eventually you can't have metformin. People associate metformin with kidney failure because the moment they have bad kidney function, they would say, oh, you cannot take metformin anymore. And they just think, oh, my metformin damaged my kidney. It's not the case. Your kidneys are bad, you can't take metformin. Okay, that's the correct analogy. What does metformin do, though? Because a lot of diabetic patients think this is a magic pill. Okay, oh, I ate lasagna, I'll eat one metformin. It's not how it works. Metformin is not an antidote for high blood sugar. Metformin blocks your liver from releasing extra sugar. Okay? So I have a lot of patients who come like, when do you take your metformin? Oh, when I had a heavy dinner. Okay? It's not an antidote. If there was an antidote for diabetes, I will not be here. I won't have a job. Okay? Diabetes is so hard to manage and control that not one particular intervention will work to control everything. So metformin stops your liver from dumping extra sugar when you eat. That's the main function of it. And a lot of times, the most common side effect of metformin is diarrhea, debilitating diarrhea. So usually, there's more to life than normal blood sugar. So if you're having your life is now described as a new relationship with your toilet, then it's not worth taking, right? So how do we address this? Because a lot of times patients get stuck with this. Oh, I can't take metformin because it gives me bad diarrhea. The next thing I would ask, what was your dose? Because a lot of providers who just go by the book would put you on the highest dose of metformin right away. They would put you on 2,000, 2,500 milligrams daily on the spot. So usually I would explain to my patients, this is not an antidote. You still have to limit your carbohydrates. Take it once a day. Report to me in 1 week. If you don't have any diarrhea, let's do it twice a day. And if you're okay with twice a day for 2 weeks, then it means you can tolerate the highest dose. If you can't tolerate the 500 milligrams once a day, let's try an extended release. Because the extended release sometimes is less irritating to the gut. So if you try the extended release, lowest dose, it still doesn't work for you, that means that's the only time I would give up on metformin. But metformin is a lifesaver, and it's the longest existing medication for diabetics. Okay, so contraindications. When I say contraindications, you can't take this if you have this in your history, okay? So these wonderful, wonderful medications cannot be given to anybody who has a history of pancreatitis. So if you ever had pancreatitis at any point in your life, this will increase the likelihood of you getting it again, okay? If you ever have a history of thyroid cancer, also this will not be recommended for you. So if those two things are not in your record, this is something worth the try. What is the side effect of this? Side effect of this medication is you would lose the appetite. That's number one. So I would explain that. You would lose appetite because it slows down everything in your gut. And if you try to eat too much, it will make you feel nauseated and sick. So if I'm trying to deal with a lot of eating behaviors, I would put them on this. And just in case this is something you think you would be able to try, at least you know the name, okay? I work for Kaiser, and it's a good institution, but we are very, very good at cost cutting. So we start everybody on the cheapest medications, and a lot of patients don't actually know these. So I kind of become a rebel, and I tell them, actually ask your doctor to order this. And I explain to them how it works. And that's how we get things, because you think the moment they order it for you, it's the best already, right? So at least you have your own information and background. You can advocate for yourself. And as I've said, I have no conflict of interest. I don't get paid. I get a lot of samples, so if this is something you want to try, and you think your insurance will cover it, then well and good. All right, so the goal of prevention is, of course, we're always hitting on weight loss. We're always hitting on weight loss, but this is such a frustrating topic, and I never usually start with this as my opening remark. Okay, weight loss is the target because weight, excess body weight, determines how much insulin you need. It determines how much insulin resistance you actually have. So if you want to prevent diabetes, if you lose at least 2.2 pounds, it prevents the likelihood of you getting it by 13%. And that's just 2.2 pounds, 1 kilogram, okay? If you're not yet diabetic. But what if you're already diabetic? What is the benefit of weight loss if you're already diabetic? So if you lose that body weight, you have actually less production of that DPP, remember? DPP counteracts GLP. So if you actually lose that weight, at least 5% of your current body weight, it actually improves insulin sensitivity up to 30% because your GLP begins to go up again. Your own GLP goes up again. So this is another thing I want to focus on. We're more on medications part right now. So at time of diagnosis, usually you've had diabetes for almost probably 5 to 10 years. At the time your sugar reaches the 200s or your A1C is 6.5 or higher, that means you've had probably diabetes for a while or pre-diabetic for a while. It doesn't just happen all of a sudden, ooh, you wake up, you're diabetic. No, it's progressive, especially for type 2. Type 1 is the ones that they wake up and then there. That's type 1 diabetes. It's genetic, it's autoimmune. Nothing much that we can really do about it. And usually the diagnosis of type 1 is in the hospital because they become so sick they need the ICU confinement. But a lot of people have type 2. I think 91% are type 2 diabetics. At the time of your diagnosis, your own insulin production is down to 20%. From 100%, you're down to 20%. And your insulin resistance, from nearly 0, you're usually 50% or higher, depending on your body weight, okay? So that's the scenario I want you to think of. Now, glipizide is my next drug that I want to talk about. The drug glipizide tells your body to produce more insulin. It tells your body, hey, gotta make more insulin, gotta make more insulin. That's what your glipizide tells your body. If you have 20% of your workers left and they're working double time, what do you think will happen to your company? You're 20% on your staff, you're working them to the ground with this medication, and you did not change anything in your lifestyle. You still eat whatever you want to eat. You're not limiting portions of carbohydrates. You take glipizide. So you overwork your body to the point that you can actually run out of insulin. And this is a case for a lot of people. So if you actually are out of insulin production, most of the time you can only survive with 0 carbs in your diet or with a lot of medications. So this is the reason why I bring this up, because each person is unique. And if you're at that point that you need insulin, I don't want you to feel bad that you need insulin. And that's why I'm bringing this up. And also, I wanted you to know what the medication does. So usually if there's a better alternative, the only time I would order this if I've tried everything else or they can't really afford anything, because this is a very cheap medication too. It can correct, it's my last resort. It's like in my back pocket. So if you're on this medication, just know how it works. That it will not correct diabetes, just like metformin doesn't correct diabetes. It just helps address one of the factors that lead to diabetes. And if not used properly, then diabetes will still become a problem for you. Now, this chart, can we dim the lights a little bit? Okay, thank you. All right, this chart shows you the natural progression of diabetes. You see how insulin resistance usually starts very low. And as you go up this curve, insulin resistance keeps going up, and your insulin production is in the opposite end. So at the end of this stage of diabetes, at the end stage of diabetes, you have very low insulin production and very high insulin resistance. That's why your sugar, regardless if you starve yourself for 2 days, it can still remain in the 200s, 300s. So what do we usually see? What do we usually see in terms of symptoms? When you're in this point, okay, there's a part wherein you actually see normal numbers. You see normal numbers and you're gaining weight. You're actually in the middle portion of diabetes. Your numbers are normal, but you begin to gain weight. The moment it's the opposite, you start to lose weight, your body starts to actually waste due to the lack of insulin, that's towards the end. Your blood sugars are high, you get dehydrated, you lose the weight, and that's the time I know we're nearing critical stage of your diabetes, okay? So this is the normal pattern, and a lot of patients are actually in this middle part. They're confident enough about their management, oh, my A1C is good, That's why we just don't treat numbers. You look at the overall picture. Because a lot of times, if you're covering sugars with a lot of medications, you're not correcting the lifestyle, it's like painting over rust. You see a rusty wall, you paint it new, it looks nice, but deep inside the rust is still there. We did not correct the problem. So what removes that is really your two main things, lifestyle interventions, okay? Helped with the correct medications. All right, thank you. We can turn it back up a little bit before people sleep. All right, so ongoing management, as I've said, this kind of talk needs to be done. You have to have this talk at least once a year if you're all okay. For my patients, I tell them I have to see you at least twice a year if you're really good. Like, your A1C is always below 7%, your blood sugar averages are good, you're not having low blood sugars, you're tolerating all your medications well, I still need to see you at least every 6 months because you don't know what happens in between, right? Yes?
If your A1C is between like 6.5 to 7,
Uh-huh.
you already need medication?
No. It's a case-to-case thing. So depends on a lot of things. If you're between, so the moment you get diagnosed with diabetes, the first intervention should be lifestyle and see how your body responds to the lifestyle interventions. And 90% of the time, when you do the correct lifestyle interventions, you see the numbers normalize. And if that's the case for you, you don't need any medications. You just need to monitor this to make sure you stay on that track, okay? But a lot of people, a lot of providers want to have that, what they call this, life vest. They put at least one medication on board because they know their patients are not that compliant, so that anytime they eat a little extra, there's a buffer. There's a buffer to keep your blood sugars within normal control. And I get that. But if the patient tells me, I don't want to be on medications, I would tell them, let's work on it. Let's see if it's possible. Because there are times that it might not be. It might be too unsafe to stop medication. So I'll give you this clear example. I have one patient, and my MA went to me and said, she said she stopped all her medications. All? Yeah, all. She stopped her insulin, all her injectables, all her pills. She stopped everything. So I checked my last note, her A1C was 12%. So that I'm like nervous, okay? I hope she answers the phone. I hope she did not stroke out yet. And so she answered the phone. It was a telemed appointment. And I said, oh, I heard you stopped all your medications. Can you tell me more about that? Because the way you approach it is also important. You don't tell them, why did you stop all your medications, huh? You don't say that. They'll become defensive, right? Can you tell me more about why you stopped your medications? Oh, because I saw this YouTube video about, I forgot the name of the doctor, but it's about reversing diabetes. Okay, so were you following everything he said? Some of it. Some of it. So she still eats carbs, basically. She was eating carbs. And then, okay, were you checking your blood sugar? No. I stopped checking everything when I stopped my medication. When was the last time you checked your blood sugar? 2 weeks ago. What is it? Oh, it was 350. Okay. Do you still have a glucometer right now? Yes. Can you check it right now? So she checked it while on the phone. Oh, it's not giving me anything. It's just saying hi. It's just saying hi. Oh, well, you say hello. Okay, say hello. When the reader says hi, it's almost 500 or 400, depending on the limit. So, okay, do you have your insulin with you right now? Yes. Oh, go ahead, inject yourself right now. Go ahead and inject yourself right now. Give yourself 10 units, and then check your blood sugar in 1 hour. If it's still saying hi to you, go to the hospital. There are times that it's not possible to stop medication. And if ever you want to be off medications, it has to be a gradual process. You can't just stop cold turkey. Okay? So at diagnosis, the moment you have a friend, oh, I'm a new diabetic, have you talked to a diabetes educator? That's the first thing. Because that's the first step that you need to take to have an idea where to go from there. At diagnosis, annually, at least once a year, or when you're not meeting your targets, as I've said, when complicating factors develop, oh, you have COPD, now you need steroids. Before I can control you with metformin, but sometimes we have to start you on a low dose insulin just because of the steroid therapy. Sometimes that happens. Or when transition in life care occur, okay? You started school, or you started a new job, you lost a job. So any significant life events, we need to revisit management to make sure it's still applicable. So in your handouts, I also placed this picture. There are 7 areas of management. This is the 7 areas of management that diabetics need to be aware of at all times. And when you're just starting and you're not in good shape in any of these, just choose one and focus on that. Okay? A lot of times, this is what's overwhelming for diabetics. They will be diagnosed with diabetes, and their doctor will give them a whole list. You have to start taking this medication, check your blood sugar 4 times a day, you have to meet with a dietitian, and etc. So usually when I have a new patient, which one do you think you can do? Let's work on that. Do you have a glucometer? I usually start with a glucometer. If they don't have a glucometer, they don't want to check their blood sugar, that's a sign for me that they plan to be non-compliant. Okay, they don't want to see the problem. And diabetes is not something you can fight blindly. You have to know the numbers. So I start with this, and I usually start with that because I want to cancel all the fears. Oh, I don't like poking my finger. I don't like poking my finger because it sounds so gruesome. Because a lot of times it's missed. They order you a glucometer. They never teach you how to use it. I have a patient, and one of my jobs in the hospital is to teach patients how to use the glucometer. It sounds simple, right? But it's such a vital skill. So this patient actually doesn't want to check her blood sugar because it's so painful. She would say, it's so painful. And when I checked her kit, her Lancet is actually set at the deepest. You can actually adjust this 1 to 7, okay? And the 7, the deepest setting, it hurts. It's meant for people with calluses, okay? Or if you're checking your blood sugar somewhere else, if you're checking it here or elsewhere where you don't want to poke your finger, it actually has a setting. And if you have very thin skin, probably the level 1 will actually do it for you. Okay, they didn't know that. They didn't know that they have to change the needle with each poke. So she's been using the same thing for over a month. So the needle is already very dull. It's very dull, poke, repeated poke, it would really hurt. So even the technique, make sure you wipe it well while it's still soft with your well, after cleaning hands, you can target the side of your fingers, set it at the lowest, lay flat, poke. And I usually do that on a visit if possible, so that they know it's doable. Oh, it's easy. I can do this at home. And then we can start with the targets. What number do you need to see? Because a lot of times, if nobody talked to you about checking your blood sugar, you don't know the target. You're just basing it on what's normal for everybody. So remember, we're not aiming for normal. We're aiming for a goal. We're aiming for a target. And that's another word we never use. We never use normal. Because when you're not normal, you're abnormal, right? So the way people talk, usually you would know if they've done the training. I looked at your record and I see that you're not at goal with your blood sugars lately. So you would see other like, oh my gosh, your sugars are so high. Okay, so you don't traumatize people that way. You want to know the goal. So in terms of goal, any number between 100 and 150, unless you're a young person, is acceptable when you're waking up. A fasting level of 100 to 150 is acceptable. It can be at goal, considered goal range. It means if you're consistently waking up at that range, your A1C would still be well between 7% or lower. Okay? Now we talk about after meals. That's the second time. We want to know how high your sugar spikes after a meal. So if I am to negotiate at least 2 times that you will check your blood sugar, at least 1 in fasting and at least 1 after a meal, to know if you're in good control. And I will not ask anybody to check your blood sugar right now. Okay? Yes. Oh, no, it's okay. The goal range for blood sugar after a meal should not be higher than 180. Okay? Not higher than 180. Okay? And again, each person will have an individualized goal. If you are aiming for a lower A1C, I can set a lower standard for you. But in terms of preventing complications, those are the 2 things. Now, if the A1C agrees with the 2 blood sugars, I'm fine with that. But a lot of times, we need more data. Okay? So remember, whenever you check your blood sugar, a finger stick is only a snapshot. So if I took a picture of you, of this angle and this angle, the moment I return here, it could look different. Because it's only a snapshot. It's only true for that particular period of time that I actually check that blood sugar. Okay? So if sugars are very variable, we have the technology to actually track that. Okay? So how often should you check your blood sugars? As I've said, my minimum goal is 2. If you are on medications, at least twice a day for, I would say, 2 weeks if we're trying to determine what management is best for you. But a lot of times you would see a lot of people would set unrealistic goals. They would set, oh, I want you to check blood sugar 4 times a day. Now, if I'm trying to get you qualified for a continuous glucose monitor, like a Freestyle Libre or Dexcom, you might need to do that to show to your insurance that you're actually doing enough blood sugar checks for them to cover it. Case-to-case basis. But for me to decide what management, I just want to see if your blood sugars, fasting, and post-meal actually agree with your A1C. Now, if they agree, I would probably just continue with how often you want to check your blood sugar. But it could be anywhere from 2 to 4 if you're diabetic. If you're not on any medications, I would tell my patients to just check it once a week. See, and whenever you see a bad number, out of your goal, let us know. So the continuous glucose monitors is a device that can actually save you from pricking your fingers too much. Now, insurance will require 2 things for them to cover this. 1, you should be showing proof that you're checking 4 times a day. Second, you have to be on insulin 3 times a day for them to say, yeah, okay, let's give it to you. But can you have this even if you don't have those? Yes, you can pay for it out of pocket. If you decide to get the Freestyle Libre, do I have it in the picture? Yeah, this is the Freestyle Libre, the round one, and this is the Dexcom. The Freestyle is the more affordable alternative because Dexcom will cost you about $1,000. Okay, Freestyle Libre is about $70, $75 monthly, and a lot of times your provider can give you a sample of the actual reader, and you just have to buy the sensors. You can buy them as a commercial patient. You have the Dexcom? Okay. So what's the beauty of these devices is that it gives you a video. It gives you a continuous measurement of how your blood sugars are. So just to have, this is what we review in the clinic. The two lines that you see are the upper and lower limit of blood sugars we want our patients to be at. So any number going below the line or going up the line, and how often they do that, is how we adjust their treatment. Oh, I see you have a lot of lows in the middle of the morning. Probably we need to lessen your insulin at night. Okay, or are you skipping meals? It gives us an idea. Like, I would know if you're not taking your mealtime insulin or days that you're actually skipping your medications. It would show here. Okay, or you actually are very good. So I, again, know when patients are not up for, talking about blood sugars, all of a sudden they have 3 days missing. They removed the sensor. I would see that, where did you go here? Oh, Vegas. Oh, okay. They don't want to be reminded of their non-compliance. Okay, but that's how it usually works. We have glucose targets, lower end, upper end, and you should be ideally staying within this line 75% of the time, not 100%. And a lot of providers have this unrealistic expectation that you should be 100% on target. Life is not perfect, neither are these devices. You can sweat a lot and it actually gives you a false reading. Okay? What other concerns that I want you to know about these technology are the patients who are so adamant about checking their blood sugars, okay? They have the Dexcom and they keep pricking their finger to make sure it's accurate. No, it will never be the same. That's the another thing that I want to tell you. Your finger prick takes blood. The continuous glucose sensors is just under the skin, and it predicts how your blood sugar is based on the fluid under the skin. They're testing two different things, so they will never be the same, but they should follow the same trend. So if your blood sugar is on its way up, both are actually progressively going up. So it's just like, imagine if this is a roller coaster, okay? You have how many levels? So what the front row sees is different from what the back row sees. So that's the same thing. One sees it sooner than the other, so they'll never be equal. What's the appropriate variation? Anywhere between 30 to 50 points. And if you just ate or took medication, it could be higher. So what should not be seen are severe extremes. You check your blood sugar, it says 40, and this one is reading 300. That's never a case. It needs to be checked if that's the case. Okay, that's the only time you need to reevaluate. Okay, so these are the reports. So this particular patient is 76% in range. 76% in range and with 22% on the higher end. Is this acceptable? I would say yes. I would say yes, it's acceptable. I usually start with the lows. How many lows have you had? Why do I focus on lows? Because the low blood sugars make you eat, right? Your blood sugar drops, you eat. Your blood sugar drops again, you eat. Each time you eat to correct a low blood sugar is feeding the medication. And each time you feed the medication, you gain weight. So we usually want to target a lot of the lows. And then if my problem is just the highs, then that's doable. Okay, so remember that. I don't want you to be stuck in an endless cycle of you're on too much medications. That's why you're eating so many. So if you have a lot of lows, the first step is not to eat more, but to cut down on the medications. Of course, when your blood sugar is low currently, you have to correct that. But if it's a trend that you notice, you have to discuss about lowering the doses of your medications. Okay, this is the next lengthy part. Okay. Let's take a quick stretch. Stand up first before we cover, because this is the most controversial part, eating food. All right, okay, just take a couple deep breaths, stretch. If you can tiptoe, stretch forward. And one of the things that I teach my patients, because if you're diabetic, you're most likely hypertensive, okay? The two go together. And the way we can do this, address this, is through mindful exercises. When you say mindful, you really all concentrate your focus on that particular activity. So if you have a heart monitor or you have a watch, a smartwatch, just do a full minute of mindful breathing, which means all you think about is inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale for a full minute, and you would see how your heart rate would actually respond for that particular time. Okay? It blocks out everything. Forget about what's due, whatever you're worrying about. Just think of your inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale for a full minute. And actually, the iWatch, I think, has a breathe app that it will vibrate when it's time for you to breathe, like you forget. So do that. Take that break. Do a mindful breathing, if you can include a short walk. So I have a lot of patients who are nurses. So I tell them, go up and down your fire exit, or go around your unit, take a quick break. It changes a lot, okay? Especially if you're about to face a certain stressor. So when stress comes in, you need to have that mindful break, that mindful breathing exercise. Because when stress comes in, two hormones get released, cortisol and epinephrine. These are stress hormones, which again fight your insulin, okay? Okay, all right. And it also, if you move at least every 30 minutes of being stationary, you actually prevent a lot of clots from forming. All right, okay, so you can sit down now. So as I've said, eat healthy. You won't hear diet from me. Eat healthy. So what does eating healthy mean? If you're diabetic, it's carbs that I'm attacking, okay? Carbs. Let's talk about portions. Okay. So what has carbs? Rice, pasta, bread, corn, beans, tortilla, but anything that grows underground except carrots. Carrots has carbohydrates, but they're healthier. They're not starchy. Okay? Potato, sweet potato, yams. Fruits. Pastries. Starchy vegetables. Pumpkin, squash. These are high in starch. Okay? High in carbohydrates. Can you have carbohydrates? Yes, but we talk about portions. So for a non-diabetic, we'll go back. Non-diabetic, your limit is 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal. We're talking about non-diabetic. So if you're non-diabetic, this applies to you. 60 grams of carbohydrates per meal, about 30 grams per snack. So that's around 240 grams in a whole day. What you don't want to do is take your 240 grams, go to a buffet, and finish all that 240 grams. So even if you're not diabetic, you will be. It will be a matter of time, but you will be. If you're diabetic, your limit is still 60 grams, provided 15 to 20 grams is your allowance for starch. Okay? It can't be you can have a full, 1.5 cups of rice. No, you can't do that if you're diabetic. Because remember, you have a broken thermostat. And if you load yourself with so much starch, it will push you to the wrong direction. So how much carbohydrates are we talking about if you're diabetic? So I always start with the healthy plate. And I think I discussed this before. Look at your plate. Always fill half of it with non-starchy vegetables. What would this be? All the leafies. And I have a lot of patients who say, I'm not a goat. Well, you can have other things that not just fresh. You can cook them. You can, you can prepare them the way you want. Have variety, okay? And half of the plate, non-starchy vegetables, okay? Zucchini, mushrooms, onions, tomatoes. What else can you think of that's not? Broccoli, cauliflower, young beans is considered non-starchy, okay? Pinto beans is starch, okay? So think of all of the non-starchy, always put it back, half of the plate. Follow this whether you're preparing your own meal or you're eating out, okay? If you're eating out, you know that they violate the healthy plate all the time. They serve you a full plate of pasta, and you think it's your obligation to finish it. Oh, there's so many people who are starving, I don't want this to go to waste. If you eat all of that, they will not get full. Think of it that way. You eat all of that, they will not get full. So start with an empty plate. Always ask for an empty plate when you're eating out. And this is a strategy I teach my patients. Actively switch out your starchy carbohydrates. So if you want a burger, probably have one wrapped in lettuce. Or if you want the one with bread, probably eat half and don't order the fries. So, and the soda as well. So think of these negotiations. half non-starchy vegetables, you have a portion. 1/4 of your plate is reserved for starch. So think of the starch that you cannot live without. Start from there. If it's rice, then rice. It's usually a palmful, okay, or a handful. Relaxed hand, not like this, okay? So relaxed hand. Okay, let's get my rice in my plate. That's it. That's my limit, okay? And then I need 2 handfuls of non-starchy vegetables. There, put it in my plate. And then at least 1 serving of protein, whatever protein you like, okay? As long as it's not breaded, okay? So that's a starter. I'm still hungry after this. What can I do? Drink a low-calorie beverage. You can have a small serving of fruit, about a handful as a dessert. You can have a serving of yogurt or dairy as part of that plate, okay? And eat more of the vegetables. Fill yourself with the vegetables and protein, not more of the starchy carbohydrate. That's a strategy. Okay? So my pictures are a little blurred. So I downloaded a couple pictures that show the healthy plate. And, all right. So this is a screenshot on my storyline. So my friends, when they post their food, I kind of, okay, this is a good exhibit. I hope it's not you. Okay, so this is actually a plate. This is pasta with the side of bread. This is a beverage. I don't know if it's high in calories, but it looks like. And this is nachos. So it's all starch. Where's the healthy vegetable? It's on the topping in the minimal amount, okay? So if you wanted, let's say, Mexican. So this is what I do, too, with patients when I talk to them, because it's so discouraging. It's like, what will I eat? Everything is not allowed. So we're talking about portions, okay? We're talking about portions. Okay, so let's say you like Mexican food, you like tacos for this meal. Order a taco salad instead of a full taco. So you can actually put a lot of vegetables, the usual taco topping, and crumble some tortilla on top. That's a compromise, right? This is a picture. This is Filipino. Okay, so he had a Starbucks drink. We talked about how much this sugar there is there. That's pancit with beet balls on top. And this is pinakbet. It's like green beans with some sauteed with meat. And then they went to a fast food Jollibee. There's a chicken, a rice, and this is gravy. So I usually target your own regular daily living. And how can we convert this to a healthier option? So if I would probably change things here, I would first, you choose. Do you want pancit or rice? Don't have both. Let's start with that. Okay, so if you want pancit, let's remove this. But the chicken's not good with pancit. Where will I put the gravy? Let's compromise. You can have half the rice and half the pancit. Is that doable? Yeah, okay, I can do that. Double your vegetable. Remove the drink. Actually, in this picture you don't see, but there's a banana here. There's a banana. Remove the banana, remove the drink. Replace it with water and probably yogurt, And it's actually diabetic friendly already. So think these are called troubleshooting, because when you go to a buffet, a gathering, you can't control everybody's decision what food they will bring, but it's your mouth, it's your body. You at least have control over what goes in it, right? Yes.
How about every after people walk 4 miles every afternoon?
Well, a mile walk is about 126 calories burned.
Because I walk 4 miles every day.
How long do you walk that?
That's about an hour and a half.
So that's about depend how the terrain is. Okay, is it inclined?
Incline and incline.
Okay, so I would say that's about an hour and a half. I would say that's about 150 calories. And the typical meal, if you ate this, there's no way, you cannot outrun a bad diet. Even if you live on a treadmill and just eat constantly, you can never outburn the sugar that you put in unless you restrict it to begin with and add exercise. And the other thing I want you to do is don't reward your physical activity with more food. This is the problem. They walk 2 hours, I deserve this, So you have to prepare. You can't just wing it. They run and then the end of their route is McDonald's. Okay, so they burn 200 calories and eat 800. So you'll never win. Okay, you really have to consciously control what's coming in for us to regulate the blood sugars. So you can't outrun a bad diet. Put that in the back of your mind. You can't outrun it. So think of other reward system though. If you did something good, you did something good for your health, think of another way to reward yourself. So if it is food, it's not that enticing, Oh, I ran 5 miles, let's eat kale. It's like, I read a meme from one of my friends. It's like, I miss the days when bread is okay and nobody knew what kale was. So I agree with that because, it's a part of culture too. If you're Filipino, part of social status is shown in what you drink, right? So if you are from a middle class to a rich family, you never just have water. You always have to have soda as part of your meal. And a lot of times when you advance in rank economically, you think that should be the next step for you too. Oh, now we can afford a soda. But now I think water is more expensive than soda. But think of it that way. Just because you got raised knowing this doesn't mean it's the right path. You can always redeem yourself from the old path that will eventually lead to diabetes. So, and this troubleshooting is actually not completely changing your lifestyle 360 degrees, but it's just making better choices. Yes? So our focus as educators is on portions. So we start with the portion before we talk about healthier alternatives. The reason behind that is sometimes if you put both together, oh, I'm already limiting and I'm going to eat something different, it's too overwhelming. But yes, having a healthier alternative is better. But the problem with this is that a lot of people think that because it's healthier, they can eat more of it. It doesn't change the portion. So in every meal, if you're diabetic, you should not be having more than a serving of starch. Now, if you chose the healthier starch, let's say white bread versus brown bread or high fiber, whole grain, the higher fiber, it just spikes your sugar less. Most likely you will have a better control of your blood sugar as compared to eating the starch, going back to the broken thermostat. It could be that the unhealthier starch, the white stuff, the white bread, can easily push you the wrong direction, wherein the healthier will not. But if you overeat the healthier, it will still push you the wrong direction. That should be the focus, yes.
I know someone who is having lunch because he says that he won't have dinner.
Okay. So your capacity to eat doesn't change even if you skip the next meal. So the problem with that is you overloaded yourself at one point. So it's better to space it. So I think that's my next, no, it's not yet. But it's in your handout in terms of the 3 things. We start with portions. Number 2 is timing. Each major meal should be at least 4 hours apart from each other. And you can have a small snack in between. And the quality and type of food matters. And the way to know if you can tolerate this or not is actually checking your blood sugar. So if you ate white bread, check your blood sugar, it's okay. Then probably you're okay with it. But some people, if they eat the wrong kind, when I say, a kind of carb that's so processed, then it might spike them the wrong way. So unless you know these data, it's really impossible for us to customize. But it's a case-to-case basis. But it never fails. It's really with portions, okay? So what is the best diet? This is another thing. I asked you, what is the best exercise? And I told you, same thing right now. The best food that you can eat is actually something that you can follow, something that is sustainable. So I've had a lot of patients who entered keto diet, okay, because it's in today. They would go ketogenic. Okay, good, your blood sugar is well controlled, but can you sustain that? Can you sustain just eating fat and a little bit of carbs? If it's something that, I'll be happy eating fat the rest of my life, so be it. But one thing I want you to know about keto diet is ketogenic is high in fat, and fat increases insulin resistance. And the only reason why your blood sugar is in good control when you're following a ketogenic diet, it's because there's no carbs. The moment you put carbs, so I have these patients who they do keto diet and then off keto, they're doing cha-cha with carb, no carb, carb, no carb. You would see their blood sugars. And a lot of patients are not actually aware. Some medications are very dangerous when you actually go on keto, like Jardiance or Invokana. Have you heard of these two medications? Jardiance, Invokana, Farxiga. These are 3 medications that make you pee a lot of the sugar out. They will actively draw sugar so that you can pee it out, you can lose weight. But if you follow keto diet with this, it can lead you to diabetic ketoacidosis, and you'll be in the hospital, ICU with an insulin drip. So before you do the extreme diets, if you don't want to do portion, you just want to do extreme, you have to consult. Yes. So intermittent fasting, good questions. I'm glad they're being asked. And I'll have more time later. Intermittent fasting, it depends on the medications you're on. If you're not on any medication, most likely it's doable. But if you're already on a planned set regimen, you have to work the timing of the fast with your provider, because you may have medications that promote low blood sugars. So I've had a patient who actually did intermittent fasting, ended up in the ER. They dropped too low because they didn't factor in the medications on board. But in some cases, again, our judge will be, how does your blood sugar respond to it? If you try it, do it gradually, guided by your medical provider, and see how your blood sugars respond to it. Don't be too experimental, especially if you're on a lot of medications. Yes?
If I'm staying on the same diet, and instead of drinking regular soda, I go to diet soda. Does the diet soda in itself cause me to gain weight or affect my diabetes? I can change anything else, just started drinking diet soda.
Okay. Definitely, if it's a diet alternative, it will be very good for your blood sugars for most people. But a lot of the diet alternatives may have some sugar alcohol that other people actually spike. Calorie-wise, when we talk about diet, sugar-wise, when we talk about diet or zero alternatives, it's better than the regular, definitely. If it's something I need to negotiate with a patient, like, okay, I can't really give up soda, then I would tell them, can you try doing the diet? And then eventually, diet doesn't taste that good. You can probably slowly wean them off. There are other things within the diet alternatives chemically present, not really bad for the sugar, but bad for something else. So if it triggers a different mechanism, as I've shown you a while ago, there are 6 areas in which your body can actually trigger a high blood sugar. You can actually experience high blood sugar even with the diet soda. But between the two, I would say it would be the lesser evil, the regular and the diet. Yes. We usually promote that, but again, our focus is understanding what comes in. So if I have a patient, is it okay to put sugar in my drink? I would tell them, you have to measure it and account for it the whole day. Make sure that you don't exceed that 20-gram limit. So if you wanted to put honey, put honey. If you want to put regular brown sugar or agave, compute it as part. Budget, put it in your budget. So the zero alternatives are for those who don't really want to count. Okay, I'll just drink this without worrying about my budget because it's basically zero. Yeah, but generally I would probably, stevia is an okay for me if a patient asks me if stevia is okay. All right, so you have to identify the different, your triggers. You have to identify what makes you eat, okay? So a lot of times it's more of the mindfulness of it. When you want to eat, look at your options. You have to be prepared for it. Number 1, when you shop, okay? When you shop, you want to make sure what's available is something that will be good for you. So a lot of times in a family wherein only one is diabetic, that's the challenge. Because everybody else is, drinking, eating, whatever they want, and then you have this patient who has to restrict, and that's very hard. So usually it's going to be a family effort to support. So a lot of times I talk to these patients and tell them, who do you live with? Can you bring them on the follow-up? so that I can get to talk to them. They understand what we're dealing with, and it's not just one person fighting the world. So be prepared for it. And I wanted to share with you, if you have a smartphone, you can actually download the ADA, American Diabetes Association Food Hub, or you can access it online. Just Google it, ADA Food Hub, and it will show you suggestions, recipes. You can classify them to the kind of cuisine, to the type of meal, if it's a snack, and then you can actually pick and choose what you want to try. It will give you a list of ingredients and how to prepare them, and it can even generate a shopping list for you. And then you can recreate that. You can put a weekly plan, a monthly plan, daily plan. It just needs an email address. Okay. So we talked about exercise a while ago, so this was kind of covered already, and I also mentioned that exercise does not substitute carb limitation because you can't outrun it. So the question a while ago, I think if you lift weights for an hour and a half, okay, it burns about 300 to 400 calories only. And the typical fast food is between 600 to 1,200. And you know how many times the typical American goes to a fast food? Take a guess. The average overall. So when I think it was a 2019 survey before the pandemic, okay, the typical American would eat out at least 3 meals in a week. 3 meals in a week. That's averaging everybody, the 50 states, okay? At least 3 meals outside. So if I can just at least help you strategize how to eat out healthier, that will blunt the effect of eating out. Okay, because sometimes it's unavoidable. We all live busy lives, so sometimes it's not doable. We really have to go for what's convenient. So you have to anticipate too what medications you're taking in relation to your food intake. There are some medications that specifically have a schedule that you cannot just take at night or take in the morning. Okay, so you have to understand each medication on that list. Not just take it because they ordered it for you. And I wanted to show you something. This is our menu as providers to determine what medication to order for you. So your provider can just look up and say, okay, what's your A1C? Did we try this? Did we try? Let's try this point. Not because they have very good knowledge on it. So for us, I would say it's different because we really specialize in diabetes. So we have a specific route that we follow and try different things depending on the patient. But just to give you an idea, I don't want you to understand what this is all about, but it's like an algorithm and how we arrive at, possible combinations of medications for patients. So insulin is one of the highlight that I want to do for this because there are really diabetic patients who might need insulin if you're not producing insulin. So how do you know if you're producing insulin or not? How do you think? I'm diabetic. I don't know if I'm producing insulin or not. Mm-hmm. So what do you think would be the sign? There is a blood test. Okay, there is a blood test, and it's one of the blood tests we always order for all our patients. Okay, it's called C-peptide. Okay, C-peptide. Letter C. C-peptide. C-peptide is a protein that wraps insulin. So when your body produces insulin, it's wrapped in a C-peptide protein. That's the best way I can give it as an analogy. So each time you use insulin, your body actually chops off that C-peptide, releases the insulin into the bloodstream. So when you measure the C-peptide, it's like measuring the amount of candy wrapper. So the more candy wrapper, the more candy, right? So if you have a lot of C-peptide, that means you have a lot of insulin, and therefore we can actually trial other medications that are not insulin. But when do we know that we need insulin? Number one, your A1C is 9%, at least 9%. You tried lifestyle modification, it did not touch your blood sugar. Those are the two things. Or, of course, if you end up needing to be hospitalized, insulin is the only medication for you. But why is insulin sometimes needed? Because a lot of my patients are so against this. I have a patient who's on heavy steroid, okay? And her blood sugars are in 300s, 400s, but she said, I don't want to take insulin because my mom, when she started insulin, she died. The fear is real. no amount of explanation can change that. So usually that is the case, but because insulin was started too late. Their organs are already all failing. They put insulin. They have end-stage kidney failure already. Everything else are just collapsing. So insulin won't really matter much. So I had to explain things. Sometimes it's in a good way that they would listen. Or I have met providers who are really blunt, you know. Okay, you don't want to start insulin, you'll be a very pretty corpse. They would say that because it's really deadly if your blood sugar is not controlled. So when your blood sugar is averaging in the 200s, two things happen. Number one, it suppresses your own insulin production. So your natural mechanism to control your own blood sugar is not there. So sometimes I consider insulin as a fire extinguisher. So everything is burning around, tame the fire to reveal how much your body can actually tolerate. So I wanted to address insulin resistance because you have so many horror stories about insulin, and a lot of times it's because of the doctors. You know, they would threaten patients with insulin, like insulin is such a bad medication. Like, if you don't change your lifestyle, I'll put you on insulin. They go, oh, I don't like insulin, you know? It's like a punishment. So when they come to us and we tell them, oh, we have to put you on insulin. No, please, no insulin. So what I do, I have 30 minutes in my visit. Sometimes I take an hour because I want to let them see how easy it is to inject insulin. I'm not going to inject anybody here. But insulin is such an easy procedure. You just have to understand why it's given, when it's given. So this is just a quick history about Dr. Banting and Dr. Best. They're the proponents of insulin. They discovered it. And the way they discovered it actually is through their dog. Okay, so they induced diabetes by removing the pancreas of the dog, induced hyperglycemia, extracted the insulin from the pancreas, and slowly injected it back to the dog, and the dog slowly recovered from diabetic symptoms. Of course, the dog died when they ran out of insulin. But that's the history of insulin. This is a type 1 diabetic patient in 1922, Leonard Thompson. So before the discovery of insulin, everybody was just doing a starvation diet to cure it. The moment they eat something, they can actually die from diabetic coma. So they're very, very malnourished because they don't have any insulin on board. Leonard Thompson is the 14-year-old who was dying from type 1 diabetes. And 12 weeks after insulin therapy, this is the boy. So insulin is actually a miracle drug. It's a hormone, and a lot of diabetics are missing it. Okay? If you're missing a hormone, we supplement it. Just like when you have a low-functioning thyroid, we give you a thyroid supplement. And nobody bats an eye, oh, I'm on thyroid supplement. If your pancreas stops producing insulin, we give you insulin while you need it. So before, bovine sources or animal sources are the sources of insulin. We extract them from animals, and then that's what we administer. But now, our insulin are actually produced in laboratories from E. coli. So they're produced by cells. They alter their genes so that they put a part there that produces the insulin, and that's what we use as of the moment. And the funny thing about this is Dr. Banting sold the rights to insulin for $1 so that everybody can have insulin. Obviously, that was not followed because it's one of the most expensive medication nowadays. So psychological insulin resistance is my focus here, that insulin is not bad. If you need insulin, you just have to understand why you're taking it, when you have to take it, and how long you need to take it. Yes?
I heard some people saying that when you're hooked to insulin, you're hooked to it.
That's usually the common practice because what happens? They start you on insulin without talking about lifestyle changes. There's no amount of insulin that can correct a bad lifestyle. You can keep on injecting, but if you don't follow the correct carb portion, it's just like repeating the cycle of your diabetes. Eventually, you'll be resistant to that insulin. So how do we know if you need it or not? That lab test will tell us. C-peptide. Number 2, of course, check your blood sugars. When it's normal, we slowly remove insulin, see if it's even possible to remove it. Yes?
So is it fair to say that if somebody is getting a full blood test on an annual basis, that their doctor would alert them if they're having any prediabetes or diabetes conditions?
It's actually in the guideline. Anybody above 30 or a certain body weight, a certain history, will prompt us to order A1C at least once a year. If you're pre-diabetes, usually at least twice. If you're diabetic, at least every 3 months, okay? But my problem is a lot of people who consider themselves healthy are not really having themselves checked, myself included. So my last blood test, I think, was 2 years ago. But I'm already managing myself like a diabetic. So if I still develop diabetes, you know, I don't know what to do. All right, so insulin is not an antidote, okay? Although sometimes it might appear like one, like, because sometimes out of, to compromise, like, okay, if you think you're gonna have a bigger meal, give 2 more units. But that should not be a common practice. That's why there's also saying that you can have a cheat meal, but not a cheat day. Make sure these are accounted for all the time. When is the best time? Anybody here on insulin though, before I cover too much about insulin? Okay, so the most common mistake that a lot of patients make is that they give the insulin after they eat. The moment you see food, your blood sugar is already beginning to go up, even if you're not eating anything yet. So depending on the type of insulin that you have, if it's the generic kind, you have to give it like 30 minutes before. If you're gonna eat a carb that's so simple, let's say you're gonna have sushi, you're gonna eat some pastries, sometimes you have to give it 45 minutes before, okay? There are certain insulin brands that work very fast that you can just give it on the first bite, okay? But if all things fail, make sure if you're having a mealtime insulin that you take it before the meal, not after. Because remember, thermostat. If your blood sugar already goes up, you can give that 8 units, 6 units, and it will not touch that blood sugar anymore. So it still becomes a problem. So this is just to show you the technology that we have. We have insulin pumps available. And again, this all goes down to insurance coverage. Okay, so these are things that if my patient doesn't want to poke, then we have alternatives that it's just like a patch. Smoking, I'll probably skip that. But of course, if you smoke, your blood vessels are constricted. It makes you more 30 to 40% higher risk of developing diabetes in the first place, and almost 60 to 80% more likelihood of having cardiovascular complications or heart problems if you're diabetic and and still smoke. Now, feet. I think this would be the last. Okay, so your feet are the most traumatized, abused part of your body. You're always stepping on them. One thing I want to tell you, never walk barefoot. Never walk barefoot, even if you live in an Asian household. Never remove your shoes, okay? If you really want, you can have separate shoes for indoors. You can do that. If you're the type that, you know, before you come in, you change shoes, that's fine, as long as you never walk barefoot. And let me just tell you a couple of stories about this. So nerve damage could be present even if blood sugars are well controlled. Okay, nerve damage can still be present even if your blood sugars are controlled. So one patient I had, actually I'll tell you 3 stories. One was in the ER. Patient cannot remove his shoes because there was a nail stuck. He didn't even know about it, okay? The other one was a homeless patient that I took care of. He came in because a street rat ate one of his toes, and he didn't feel anything, okay? The last one was a healthier patient, controlled blood sugar. She always walks barefoot at home, and she actually stepped on her sewing needle. And then she felt it because her nerves are intact. Ouch, she removed it. She didn't know it broke. So around I think it was a 2 centimeter fragment was left. And every time she walked, it kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. So she went to a podiatrist because her foot was just swelling, and she was sent to the ER because they can no longer pick it. They cannot reach it. So they had to do interventional surgery in the hospital, and it went all the way up in between her toes just because she walked barefoot, okay? So never walk barefoot. And the other thing I want to tell you is if you're changing shoes, make sure you have a small mirror in front where you change shoes so you can just simply do a quick visual on the bottom of your feet each time you change shoes. If you're diabetic, you want to make sure you're doing your shoe shopping at the end of your shoe fitting, if you're shopping for shoes at the end of the day, because all diabetics Even if your blood sugar is controlled, you have swelling at the end of the day. You have swelling at the end of the day, and you want to make sure that's accommodated when you're buying shoes. If it's getting colder, make sure they're always moisturized, but not in between the toes. Okay? Around, but never in between the toes. Those promote blister formation and potential foot ulcers as well. If your A1C is above 8%, do not have a pedicure. If your A1C is above 8%, make sure only a podiatrist touches your feet. Cut your toenails straight across and never around to prevent ingrowns. I lost count of the times like, oh, I just went here and now it started to swell, oozing, and no more toes. So cut straight across, don't shape them around. And always wear a blend of diabetic socks, okay? Not 100% cotton. Never wear 100% cotton socks because they retain moisture. So it has to be a blend, I think 40-60, cotton and polyester. If you have good insurance, they will actually cover diabetic socks. The special thing about diabetic socks, they don't have inseams. So you know how the usual socks have inseams that can have pressure inside the toes? If you don't have budget to buy diabetic socks, buy regular socks, turn them inside out, and wear the smoother one facing your feet. These are the most common parts where they check for sensation. We have to check them at least once a year. And make sure when you have your annual physical, remove your shoes, put them out so your doctor will check them. Because they won't. They won't. They won't. In the chart they did, but they won't check them. So unless they're as meticulous as my assessment, but they usually won't. It will pop up as an assessment, did you check the feet? Because diabetics need to be checked at least once a year. They would say yes. So, and you're in a 15-minute schedule or 30-minute at most, right? So they want you in and out. If you have no complaints, they'll just, they'll do this. You won't even know if they're really listening, right? Because if you're well, they won't really have to, they're not looking for something. You just have to feel that you were checked. So my advice, if you're diabetic, let your feet out already. If they're there, they will look at it. That's my advice. That's my advocacy for you guys. If you have a friend who's diabetic, do that. Tell them. Follow up. As I've said, if you're well controlled every 6 months, when stuff changes, when you're not meeting targets. Minimum is every 3 months if you're trying to maintain things, and if your insurance covers it, every 3 months. If you're not diabetic, at least once a year. Okay. All right. And that's it. Questions? Yes.
If you have worn nerve endings in your fingertips, because they're very sensitive,
Uh-huh.
and it's fair to say that you have less nerve endings in your forearm, not as sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they have people poke their fingertips? That's going to cause more pain than it would in the forearm.
I think it's how because it's not a typical place. It's the skin, the skin here is, I think, easier to heal than the skin here. So less chances of infection. That's what I remember from why it's finger stick. So I did have patients who don't have hands. So we were checking them here. So it's not, and plus I think the FDA approval for the strips is blood coming from the fingertips. That's a part of it. And that's the reason why some things you have to attach in the belly, some you have to attach. It's part of their FDA approval. Yes. Warm them up. It has to be warmed up. And then different techniques, warm them up, massage them until they're red before you poke. Yes, sister. Uh-huh. Yes. So, or lower, yes. Uh-huh. Well, I don't know a predictor of just based on cholesterol how likely that you'll have diabetes, but definitely if you have high fat intake, it increases your insulin resistance. And usually, if you have high fat intake, usually you're not following the appropriate diet as well. So we commonly notice diabetics having, we call diabetic dyslipidemia. If you become diabetic, it always accompanies that you have bad metabolism of cholesterol as well. So the 4 cholesterols that we look at, triglycerides, total cholesterol, HDL, and the LDL. The HDL is the good cholesterol, also known as your high density. We want that high. The rest, we want them low. The highest risk factor for heart disease is LDL. That's why that's one thing that we focus on. Triglycerides is an indicator. If that is high, that means your carbohydrate intake is high. So when I look at the lipid panel, okay, what did you do? Okay, triglycerides indicate high carb intake. Okay? And if you're between 45 and 75 years old, based on current studies, you need to be on a medication to control it, even if it's normal range. You have to have a maintenance of a medication that can lower cholesterol actively, because fat and sugar are best friends, okay? When they see each other in the blood, they hug each other. You know, I haven't seen you, bestie, you know. I haven't seen you for a while, okay? They would hug each other. They will form a heavier molecule that settles on the arteries that forms heart disease. So you need to have that buffer. If you're between 45 to 75 years old, you need to have that in place, even if your cholesterol panel is normal, if you're diabetic, okay? It shows significant reduction of heart disease, yes. Our stand on supplements is, since we don't prescribe it, if it makes you feel good, take it, okay? So our recommendation is your diet should be your medicine, unless we really need to put other medications in place, okay? Let your diet be your medicine. I shouldn't say diet. Let your food, your eating habits, your lifestyle be your medicine, okay? Remember, each time you take a bite of something, it either feeds your illness or heals it. That's the main focus of mindful eating. So before you take that next bite, the mindful eating will tell you, whatever is in this particular food, will it make me better or will it make me worse? So that's one of the deciding factor. But a lot of times you're so hungry, you just eat, you know? There's no room for mindfulness. Yes? It depends. Again, this is individualized. If eating less than 3 meals makes you overeat on those 2 meals, that means you have to space them more. Just add another meal. But if you can eat 2 meals a day without compromising the amount, meaning you're still sticking to the correct portions, then 2 meals would be okay. So it's all about, we don't tell you you have to eat 3 meals. If you want to eat 2 meals, as long as you're not overeating with those 2, you're not going hungry, you're not over snacking, then 2 meals should be fine. It depends on what's in those portions. So if you're eating every 2 hours, but it's like pastries, and that doesn't help, okay? That doesn't help. Or every 2 hours, I eat a small scoop of ice cream, that's still gonna spike your sugar. Yes, brother Jesse.
Jardians and metformin together.
Any specific question about the two?
I take Jardians once a day.
Okay.
And my metformin is twice,
Okay.
a total of 2,000. But I've cut it back down to 1,000 because I'm currently been doing intermittent fasting for over a year. So it's become a lifestyle, not a diet for me. So I'm able to control my sugar and bring it down, keep my A1C down pretty low. So how does Jardians work in combination with that?
Okay, so Jardians is used with caution depending how long you fast. So how long do you fast?
14 to 16 hours.
Okay, and what's the dose of your Jardians?
25.
25. Okay, so one would be blood sugars, and if you're not actively limiting your carbs within the time that you're eating, Jardians should be fine. If you're actively limiting your carbs and you're doing intermittent fasting, so if you're on a very low carb diet and you're still intermittent fasting, I would not recommend Jardians. Or try Jardians at a lower dose. Because Jardians draw sugar from the urine, it flushes out of your system. And if there's no carb to draw from, it will start breaking down your fat. And that will lead you to the hospital. Okay? Yeah, yes.
Talk about how bad cereals are for us, like cereals that I always full of them, right? You talk about how I grew up eating cereal, and during that snacking time, but after doing research, I understand that it's not good for us.
Yes, I agree with that. And usually the commercial cereal brands are genetically modified. If you look at the brand, let's say, I think Cheerios or just look at the brand, they have a disclaimer. They will tell you that their product is using genetically modified sources. Okay, that one is already a red flag for me. Number two, it's processed. Okay. Number three, it's packed with sugar. So that's a common thing. I also grew up with cereals, and it's simple starch, simple sugar. You add milk to it. It's up there, and then it's gone. So it spiked your sugar, didn't give you much benefit. It's an empty calorie, and it's out. So if you're diabetic, it spiked your sugar, and it will stay there. If you're diabetic, that's the movement it will make. Okay, it will make you go up there and stay there, even if you portion that. Unfortunately, a lot of my patients come, and as long as that's part of their diet, their sugar is always higher. Yeah. So I usually recommend, probably eat a very small amount and add some protein to that particular breakfast combination. Yes.
Question. You mentioned a while ago about the weight.
Uh-huh.
And it has how many grams per piece?
2 grams per piece.
Is it healthy to eat fruits, and what kind of fruits has so much?
Okay, good question. So if you're diabetic, again, we're going back to diabetic, but I'm trying to follow this too. For any sugar intolerance, your limit of fruit serving is 3 servings in a day. If you convert that to numbers, that's 15 grams of carbs coming from fruit. Okay, that's about a handful of fruit. So whatever fruit that you can think of that you like, limit it to a handful. And that's your fruit serving. And it has to be spaced throughout the day. Okay? So if it's watermelon, chop the watermelon, put it here. Not the whole watermelon. Oh, 1 serving. Okay? What are the 3 highest in sugar? Cantaloupe, banana, and grapes. Okay? These 3 are usually high in sugar. So can you have them? Yes. So if I have a patient who's really into watermelon, I tell them, get a slice, make flavored water. Put it in your water, let it infuse. You'll still taste some watermelon in your water, but not really get all that sugar from it. So that's my strategy for fruits. But you have to understand that doesn't mean it's plant-based. It's good for you. Usually the plant-based are the highest in carbs, so you still have to be aware of that. Yes. Nuts. Nuts are generally neutral carbs. So that's my go-to if you're not allergic, if you don't have diverticulosis, okay, or any kind of, there are some nuts that are high in oxalates. If you don't have kidney stone problems or uric acid problems, nuts should be a good alternative for a quick snack. So, what was that? Mixed nuts. They're usually higher in oil. So again, this needs to, if you have a sensitive diet, then you might need to discuss this if you eat too much of something. Okay, you need to have that discussion. So, but generally, if you would look at the serving size, a handful of mixed nuts is only around 3 grams of carbs. So usually I tell my patients, you're hungry, take a tablespoon of peanut butter. Make sure it's the low sugar kind. Tablespoon. You can put it with celery, So celery is good. Snacks, again, you have to be creative. So nuts, vegetables that you can eat fresh, sweet peppers. You can use ranch. Okay? A lot of people are like, can I have ranch? Yes, you can have, as long as you don't drink it from the bottle. Okay? Have a small dipping sauce. That's your serving. Once you finish that with the vegetables, that's your snack. You're still hungry after that, eat some nuts. Things to avoid, granola bars, protein bars. So these are usually packed with sugar, unless they're specially say keto friendly. So if they're keto friendly, they're low in carbs but high in fat. That's the setback, but it's going to be probably healthier for you. It might be a good fit. Well, it depends how your system works. So there's no one size fits all, unfortunately. So these are all good alternatives, though, rather than, you have to be familiar with serving sizes too. Because I have a lot of patients who are like, oh, look at this box of cookies. It only has 18 grams of carbs per piece, not per box. So she was like, so there are some cookies that are 18 grams of carbs per piece. I think Oreo, you can have 2 pieces for 1 serving. 16 grams of carbs is in 2 pieces of Oreo. So would you rather have that or get a handful of vegetables, a handful of nuts, and so it's a matter of addressing hunger, because if you're starving yourself, it will not work. You cannot starve yourself. It will not work. It will just make you eat more. So the healthy eating pattern, the healthy eating habit needs to be built over time. You can't just know what to cook and prepare for all your 3 meals, for all your snacks. So build on it. So what do I advise my patients who are struggling with that? Look for sources. Number 1 will be that ADA Food Hub, okay? Or support group. You may have a group that are all diabetics. Oh, this food item does not spike my blood sugar. Have you seen this zero noodles? So shirataki noodles. So sometimes I talk to my patients and I actually learn from them what they eat, and I can suggest it to my patients in the future. So if you have that, begin writing down the things that you think you can eat. Start with 1 dish. Put it in a box. Next dish. Oh, this is also good. Write it down. Put it in a box. Or sometimes it could be a photo. You saw it in Facebook. Screenshot and then make a folder. Food ideas for diabetic-friendly ideas. I have that in my phone. So when I have a patient, I just browse through the stuff that I found or make myself. So that's how you start. And then eventually, okay, what do we have this week? Okay, let's look at my list. What can we try? Oh, we haven't had this, baked salmon, for a while. So that's how you start. You can't just all of a sudden leave this room and then, oh, I'm a brand new person, So you just have to identify those times, and then what do I do now? What's the healthier alternative? Okay, so that's how it has to be sustainable. Yes?
If you would subscribe to saying you should be eating more of your meals earlier in the day, as opposed to 10 o'clock at night, because you go to sleep, not going to burn out, what would you, as a general rule, say would be a good time to say, this is good time, shut-off time for a big meal?
It varies, because I do have people who work night shift, right? It's like their day is never the same, or they have shift difference. Like sometimes a full month, they're night, the next time. So general rule between the big meals, okay? There shouldn't be big meals, actually. Major meals, I should say. Major meals, at least 4 hours apart, whether your 6 a.m. is dinner. Ideally, if you can actually, let's say you don't really feel eating breakfast, and all your breakfast is just coffee. You drink coffee, and then your next meal is actually 10 o'clock, which is like brunch. Still stick to that portion, okay? So if you're trying to, portion your carbs, let's say I want to eat a little bit more carbs, time it in the period where you're still going to be active, okay? So if you're more hungry at night, have you can push your carbs at nighttime. But if you're more active during the day, then put it during that time. The other thing about this, I mentioned, after you eat, do a 10-minute activity, right? The other thing that helps would be incorporating being physically active in every chore. Somebody said doing chores a while ago, right? So you go to Costco and everybody's fighting for the first spot, right? Everybody's like waiting to be in the most convenient spot to park. intentionally park farther so that you can actually walk. And then, you're trying to get eggs, it might not be friendly for your budget, but do a walk around before, reroute yourself so you can walk more. So those things are sustainable. Not buying a fancy, device, not subscribing to a meal service. It's good if you can afford them, but are they sustainable? So it has to really be a day-to-day thing that you adapt. Not just, oh, I feel healthy today, I'll be good, and then the rest until my next A1C. So it has to be something daily, sustainable, work one thing at a time. And if you feel lost, my advice, the time that you need to see your diabetes specialist is the time you don't want to see them. So when you feel like you don't want to see, you want to avoid that person who helps you with your diabetes, that's the time you have to talk to them. Okay? Because that's when you need help the most. It's the same for church. When you don't feel like going to church, that's the time you need to go to church. When you don't feel like praying, that's the time you need to pray more. So I think it's the same with blood sugars. It's being honest. That's another problem I see with a lot of patients. They would say, yes, I'm taking my medications, even if they're not. I see the high blood sugar, and then you say that you're taking the medication. The next logical thing I will do is increase your medication. Because you're telling me you're very compliant and you're still not meeting the numbers, most likely it's a medication problem. So you have to maintain that honest, open communication. Like if they ordered 2,000 milligrams of metformin, you don't feel good about it, say that. You have to advocate for yourself. Okay? Any other questions? No, the snack actually is for the 12-hour insulin. If you're on insulin N, that's 12 hours. It has a spike in 4 hours. So if you injected right now, let's say 8 o'clock in the morning, it will spike at 12 noon. So you will need a snack. You need to eat something, not really, you don't eat a burger or what. You just have to eat something. You can't skip that meal to prevent the lows. If you're doing a nighttime dose, let's say with dinner time with the N, it will spike around 11. Okay, 7, then 11. Give a small snack. But if you're on Lantus, unless you're overdosed with Lantus, it should not drop you in the middle of the night.
So it doesn't matter if the patient uses a snack.
Yes. So if you need a snack before you sleep, you're on too much insulin. Okay? You're on too much insulin. If you need to eat a little bit more so you don't drop, you need to cut back on the insulin rather than eating more before you sleep. Because you're going to sleep, you eat that carb, it will just build up as body weight. So, yeah.
As we all know that type B is lifestyle, how about if type A is that generic?
1 and 2. So type 2 is usually lifestyle associated. Type 1 is usually genetic. You're born with it, usually at an earlier age. But I have type 1s who actually are in their late 50s. So it can happen at any time, more common during the younger years. But type 2 is always lifestyle. It could be genetic in such a way that, you have everybody in your family with type 2 just because you all follow the same lifestyle. So you think it's genetic, right? I think I gave that meme before. Diabetes runs in my family. No, nobody runs in your family, okay? Nobody's physically active, so. And I saw, yeah. Any other questions? All good questions.
Within the recommended amount. Should you just eat the fruit and not juice?
Yes, so we're on a whole food emphasis. So the less processed, the better. So we are against the healthy shakes, that very healthy smoothie, you put protein powder and everything else. That's still processed. The moment you blend that vegetables, it becomes processed. You took away the time for your body to break down that food, okay? So instead of making a smoothie, eat them separately. Probably when you wake up, eat that apple, drink that almond milk later as a part of your snack, instead of blending it all together and then that's it. So yeah, generally processed, we recommend against it. If it's processed, you want to try to limit your, basically you need to see where things are coming from. So instead of buying a protein bar, as I've said, buy your own nuts separately and eat them separately. Whole food is our focus, whole food. Avocado is plant-based. In fact, it does fill you up, but it has bad cholesterol. It's plant-based, but it has bad cholesterol. So if you have high cholesterol to begin with and you eat too much of it, then it's going to be bad. Same thing with, oh, I like making fried chicken, but I use olive oil. Doesn't matter. You process olive oil in heat, it loses its good cholesterol quality. The only time it's good if it's not processed in heat. So if you fry things, try to avoid frying stuff, okay, with oil because it makes it bad cholesterol. Avocado is okay. Let's say you eat 1/4 of it, put it as part of a side of your meal. It fills you longer, and it's not violating your fat intake for that meal. But if you eat, 1 whole per meal, that's too much cholesterol on boarding. A sugar. Condensed. Or you break it with other kind of milk. My Latin friends are scandalized by that. Like, they thought it was guacamole in the ref. It's actually mashed avocados with milk, and they did tortilla with it. Yeah, unfortunately, as I've said, look at all our Filipino food. It's really leading you down that path. And if you're struggling with blood sugars, I suggest stay away from pure Filipino stuff. Probably make it a treat once in a while. Pass by Island Pacific. Look at Island Pacific. They would serve their meals with 2 full cups of rice. That 1 cup of rice is actually 4 servings. 1 cup is 60 grams of carbohydrates. So they give you 2, or even if it's noodles, that's around 120 grams of carbs with that 1 meal. So if you eat it for 3 days, that's fine.
If you work a regular work week, not a night schedule or anything like that, would you say that 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. would be a good time to have your dinner and then pause there, or is it okay to have dinner at 8 p.m.? If we go to bed at...
As long as you're not sleeping within the next 2 hours after your meal. Okay? Yeah. So as long as you don't eat, then sleep. That's usually a risk for both gaining weight and hiatal hernia. Because all of that food that you ate are pushing against your stomach when you lie down immediately. So depending on the blood sugars, that's when I recommend, can you probably, because I have patients who work out early in the morning. Okay? Heavy breakfast after that workout. Heavy dinner, and then they, just slouch. Arrange your environment in such a way that you can actually still include your physical activity. If you're always watching TV, you have a recliner or you have a massage chair. You have a massage chair. Put some weights near that, and then while you're watching, just do as many arm curls that you can. Do some stretching. I tell my patients, do you have a stationary bike? You watch TV, put it in front of your TV. Ride your bike as long as you can tolerate it. I have work from home patients who I told them, get that pedal, put it under your desk. And then they keep pedaling while answering calls and on Zoom meetings, and then they're panting. While one of my patients said they thought I was doing something because I'm actually doing my exercise while attending a meeting. So you have to be creative in incorporating that physical activity part. Next would be your carb, those 2 things, and then strategize medications with your provider.
Depending upon your body, isn't fasting good for you? Depending upon,
Depending on how you respond to fasting. So if you fast and you actually become, a voracious eater right after you're fasting, then probably you can cut your fasting shorter. But if you can sustain it without overeating, then fasting could work for you as well.
14 hours would be good to fast.
I know
15 hours.
anywhere between 8 to 16 is what I see people on. Anything extreme would be not sustainable, I would say. Yeah. And you can't just do from no fasting, you fast 16 hours, you'll collapse. Because your body is used to that. You have to train your body. So that's why, at the scheduled time that you're eating, you actually feel hungry because your body already anticipates that this is the time to eat. So you can't just wing major changes. Mm-hmm.
Talk about the cramping. What is the cause of that?
Cramping.
Yeah, I have severe cramps.
Oh, that's part of neuropathy and paired with electrolyte balance. So if you have kidney problems, that can actually happen because your electrolytes are always shifting. You can lessen it, but there's no really permanent cure. So one, to prevent the occurrence would be really improving, making sure your blood sugar is always in good control because your blood flow would be improved. So at least that part won't be a cause of the cramps anymore. But the fluctuation of the electrolytes, we don't really have a control over that. Yes?
How much avocado do you recommend for a week?
I would say 1/4 per meal is okay. 1/4 an avocado, yeah. So the serving size would be the average, not the big ones. 1/4 of that. I would say around 2 full tablespoons per meal of the avocado. So if you eat that once a day, just approximate it and make sure when you're having a lot of avocado, you don't have a lot of fried food. That's okay.
All right. So do you have any more questions?
I think either we're too many. There's only 10 pieces there. We can raffle the blood sugar machines, or how do we do that? I forgot about them.
Okay. So how do we do?
Do we
David, go ahead and how.
How do we do the raffle of this? There are 10 pieces.
We can no, we have numbers. So
We have the sign up sheet.
Irma, can you get the number the raffle tickets on the drawer, please?
So this is a sampler. It will have 10 strips inside. So if you want to continue using it, your provider needs to prescribe the strips and the lancets.
So are you going to raffle everything?
Just the 10 probably, and whoever wants the.
So 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
10. Strips lang to. So I don't know if anybody's using Freestyle Light. Anybody using Freestyle Light? Are there more than one?
Pastor
Okay.
Marlon, can you?
Because this will only work with the Freestyle.
Okay, so how do we do the raffle? Can you help Pastor Marlon?
So give one each.
Umuwi na si Marco.
Okay, so Pastor Marlon is going to. So if you're going to buy this, how much is this?
I think how much is that? I think it's $50.
Wait, that has but that has test strips, right?
Yeah, just 10 test strips. $20 for the reflect. It's anywhere between $20 to $30.
So maybe about $20 to $30 if you're going to buy
10.
10.
But there are 11 groups of families here. What about it's one per family?
Are
Oh.
there?
Oh, okay.
There are more.
So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, so one for each family.
$35 per.
Okay,